All right, so I was most certainly not expecting to do this today. Alabama just lost to Michigan as a 16 and a half point underdog in the ReliaQuest Bowl. This is my first ever emergency press conference. And like I said, I was not expecting to do this at all today. But nonetheless, here I am. And I've always said on this channel, it's always been my philosophy that I don't want to bring in I can't talk homerism to this program. I don't like to show bias at all, but as an alumnus of the University of Alabama, I think that I've got to use this platform at this point to say things that need to be said because I've watched several games this year that have been agonizing as not only a Bama fan, but a Bama student at one time. It's been really tough to watch. And there's a lot of things about this program that are really starting to eat at me. And I think it's time for me to voice that and address it. My man Alex Chasen saying he loves the hustle for me to hop on live right now. Appreciate you, brother. That's what we do. I know it's New Year's Eve. This wasn't in the cards. But nonetheless, when something like that happens, you've got to hop on live and break it down. So, like I was saying, there's a lot of things about the Alabama football program right now that are starting to concern me, that are starting to show me a red flag. And this isn't going to be a gloom and doom rage type live stream either. I'm not going to point fingers, call for people's heads, blame this person, blame that person, say this person needs to be fired. I'm just going to assess what's going on and break it down as what it is. This was Kalen DeBoer's first year as Alabama's head coach. And he had massive shoes to fill. Being Nick Saban's predecessor, that's something that you've got to consider and add context to. Massive shoes that he's filling. And going from Washington to Alabama naturally was going to be a massive adjustment. And so I don't want to sit here and call for his head after 1 year. It's also known too in the college football community that you usually, as a head coach, you need 3 years to really get traction, get your guys in there, no matter what program you're taking over for, and no matter what cards you already have in the garage. It's going to take you at least 3 years to get your team, your guys that subscribe to your regime and your philosophy. It takes 3 years. This is Kalen DeBoer's first year. So I'm not going to call for his head and say that he needs to be fired and say that he's on the clock because he's not. The one thing that I will say is that coaching staff in general has to find ways to be more creative and make some adjustments in the second half of these games. I saw it against Tennessee, saw it against Oklahoma, saw it again today against Michigan. No second half adjustments at all. It's the same product that you saw on the field in the first half coming back out for the second half of the game. I've been watching Alabama football for a very long time. This has been my team since I was 13. I was an Oregon fan before because of the flashy uniforms. When I think most of us kids were. But I've been a Bama fan since I was 13 because of Nick Saban. I went to college there, so I will ride and die with the Tide. That was by far the most embarrassing performance that I've seen out of Alabama in my entire life. I was mortified. Every element today. And I've seen some real stinkers these past several years. The Oklahoma game obviously was embarrassing. The Tennessee game this year was embarrassing. The LSU loss in 2022. Even some of the Auburn games that Alabama managed to win these past several years in 2023 and 2021. Those games as a whole were embarrassing. Alabama found a way to pull it off, but they were embarrassing for the bulk of it. Today, by far the most embarrassing Alabama game that I've watched in my entire life. There was no juice whatsoever. There's no drive, no focus whatsoever. Alabama seemed very ill prepared, which was not the theme at all under Nick Saban. Alabama was always ready to go and always prepared and always maximizing each opportunity. If you had an opponent give you an opportunity, a Nick Saban Alabama coach team would capitalize on it. And most importantly, a Nick Saban coach team would make adjustments at the half. It's one thing to start off a game slow. It's going to happen sometimes. Sometimes you're just going to go out there. You're not going to have your fastball. You keep the deficit at a minimum. Go in for the first half, regroup, devise a new game plan, assess what worked, what hasn't worked, and you go out with a renewed game plan. That did not happen today. It's one thing to start slow. Alabama today started completely and utterly miscombobulated. It was baffling what I saw today. 3 turnovers in the first half for first 3 quarters. The leading rusher at Alabama was a receiver. He had 26 yards. This is a team that has Jalen Milroe and Jam Miller. There should be, and Richard Young, there should be a lot more rushing yards on the board than just that at that point. So, and they look completely miscombobulated, completely out of rhythm, incredibly sloppy. And a lot of that, I firmly believe, goes back to something that I said a couple weeks ago, and I still subscribe to this notion as of today. Jalen Milroe and Kalen DeBoer, it was never a fit together. It was never a union that led to consistent positive results. And I attribute that to the fact that Kalen DeBoer's vision for that offense does not align with Jalen Milroe's capabilities as a quarterback. What do I mean by that? Kalen DeBoer wants to stretch the field. He wants to have an aerial approach. He wants to go deep a lot. And to have that, to pass the ball for over 330 yards a game, you need a quarterback who specializes in airing it out, is a gunslinger by nature. That's just not Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe is a dual threat quarterback that works in a system that's predicated and focused on the run. So you look at an offense in the NFL, kind of like the Ravens, or like what Alabama was last year, or what Michigan was last year. And Milroe fits that scheme because he is a very special talent. Don't get me wrong. Jalen Milroe is a very talented player, and he's an amazing leader. He has a lot of value. His style of play fits in certain defenses. And it just does not in Kalen DeBoer's for what his vision is. It just doesn't align. And so there was that disconnect this year because of that. And that's nothing that you're going to correct until one moves on from the other. Now you're going to see Milroe either go to the draft or go to another team. And I think that split is what's best for both parties involved. I think you'll see this Alabama team get better with another quarterback at the helm who fits what Kalen DeBoer desires his offense to look like. It's not Jalen Milroe. I don't know if it's Ty Simpson or Austin Mack or somebody that's in the portal that Alabama may go grab. I don't know who it is just yet. But there is somebody out there who fits what Kalen DeBoer wants to do with his offense more than Jalen Milroe, and that disconnect was never going to be overcome this year, and that's what ultimately led to Alabama's demise. My man David Talks Buffs, man. If you Want to get the inside scoop on Colorado sports, that's the guy to listen to. He said he didn't catch the end of the game, but was surprised to see the final score. Weren't we all, brother? We're both in that losing boat, that losing kayak right now. It's we're going down Schitt's Creek without a paddle. Oh, let me tell you. And I'm going to say this too. For a while, Alabama's offensive line play was incredible. And it was on both offense and defense. The way Alabama was able to win games in the trenches. And I say that on this channel a lot. Games are won in the trenches. You're going to see it all NFL postseason. You're going to see it today and tomorrow. And all of these playoff games, they are won in the trenches. Alabama's offensive line needs a lot of work. And I was genuinely shocked by the product that I saw this year because I know a lot of those guys on that line personally from working with the team last summer, and I watched them practice. I know what they're capable of. These guys are dogs, absolute dogs. 70, 80% of programs out there would kill to have guys like this in their offensive line room. Yet there was a lot of underperformance that went on this year. The offensive line for Alabama needs a lot of work going into next year because that was one of the weakest links. And if your offensive line is bad, guess what? It trickles into every other element of your offense. Look at the Houston Texans this year, right? You know, you have people pointing fingers at C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud's regressing. He's not the same guy. Oh, sophomore slump. No. That offensive line is doing him no favors. He has no time to get the ball off. And Jalen Milroe played poorly today. That's reality. That's the truth. He would tell you that. But you can attribute a lot of that performance to how the offensive line performed today. Because there were a lot of plays today in which he snaps the ball, he automatically has 3 or 4 blue jerseys with Mays letters in his face. It was happening all day today. And when you don't have that amount of time to breathe, there's only so much you can do. And I also, to put a positive spin on this too, I have to credit Michigan. These past 2 weeks, 3. Even they almost beat Indiana. That was mid-November. My bad. But between their game against Indiana, their game against Ohio State, and their game today, Michigan, kind of like Florida this year, when everybody was counting them out, they used that as bulletin board material to motivate themselves and show the world that they're still Michigan. And now that they have Bryce Underwood coming next year, this is going to be a very good team. Everybody, do not sleep on Michigan. I'm saying it right now. You're going to see Sharon Moore take a jump from year 1 to year 2 because they played their asses off these past several weeks. And today, they had a lot of guys either in the transfer portal, opting out, not playing today, especially in defense. They still brought it. That's culture. That's culture. That's something that Jim Harbaugh built and Sharon Moore extrapolated upon. So I got to give it to Michigan today and against Ohio State for how they battled, how they played. Very, very, very impressive stuff. But you still can't take away from the fact that Alabama has a lot of work to do on that offensive line. What bothers me to the core, and I've said it on here multiple times, is that I know that with the guys they have in that locker room on that team, Alabama is capable of beating Penn State or beating Notre Dame. I've said that. They have a better roster than both of those teams. And when that talent is being guided in the right direction, I think they're capable of beating anybody. Hell, this team beat the team that I think is the best team in the nation in Georgia. They're capable of amazing things. You just didn't see it consistently enough this year. It was the lack of consistency that, as an Alabama alumni, killed me about this team this year because they were really capable of so much more. Attention to detail was very sloppy this year. It was not a disciplined team at all. I don't think they brought their A game in a lot of games. They not only did not have their fastball, they didn't bring their A game. They weren't focused. They weren't prepared. They weren't locked in. Nick Saban always said something. Playing a complete 4 quarters of football, start to finish, with complete maximum intensity. He preached that all the time. And I let me go back. I saw one complete game from start to finish out of Alabama this year, and it was the LSU game. And I said, wow, they may really be able to build off of something here. They didn't. They reverted back to their old ways against Oklahoma. And it took some time to get things going against Auburn too, and then reverted back to the same version of themselves that they were against Oklahoma, against Michigan today. And after watching the first 3 or 4 drives today, I'm like, this is the Oklahoma game all over again. You're playing against a team that you are not only better than, significantly better than. The point spread would suggest that, because Vegas knows a thing or two because they've seen a thing or two. Shout out Farmers Insurance. You're significantly better than Michigan. But yet you keep them in the game because you're making mental mistakes. You're making critical errors. You're playing lackadaisical. You're not playing with intensity and focus and drive. You let a team like Oklahoma not only get back in the game, but blow you out. You let a team like Michigan beat you. In no way, shape, or form should Michigan beat Alabama. No way, no how. But you let that happen when you're sloppy with the details. You don't play a complete game, 4 quarters of football at maximum intensity. You let a team that you're significantly better than get back into the game. You saw it today with the fumbles, the interceptions. And I want to say too, and I don't know what the source of this was, Jalen Milroe's confidence started to go down this year, in the second half of this year. And that's something that I don't want to see, because this is a guy that works his ass off. Take it from somebody who was in the building. You'd start the day. I was one of the first people to get into the building, right? Being in player development. I got there around 5:30. He was already there for half an hour. He saw his car parked in the driveway. He was already there for half an hour. He would work out before the 6:30 workouts. And then he'd go through that workout at maximum intensity and then go to class and then come back for lunch. And in the time in between lunch and 7-on-7s, he was back out on the field practicing his throws. That's work ethic. That's drive. You can't teach that. And so seeing that he has that in him, I want to see the guy succeed. But something happened in the second half of this year where his confidence just started to drop. And I don't know what the source of it is. I want to see him get a fresh start somewhere else, because I think that Jalen Milroe is so incredibly talented and capable of so much as a quarterback. And I want to see him flourish. I also, on a positive note, want to shout the defense. The defense today played fantastic, limiting Michigan to 19 points. Granted, it's not a generational offense by any means in Michigan, and Davis Warren got hurt, so they had to pivot to Alex Orji. No, it's not a barn burner of an offense, but those guys still went out there today and played at maximum intensity. And so for that, I credit Alabama's defense. Very well coached, had great attention to detail today. So shout out to the defense. But this, for Alabama, this is as low as you go. This is the most embarrassing Alabama loss that I've seen in my time of being a fan. And in the last 25 years, it's the most embarrassing loss since the Louisiana Monroe loss at home. This was that bad. When you come out and you don't even show up against Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl, That's embarrassing, and that's a really tough pill to swallow. But I'm somebody that I'm not going to sit here and dwell in misery and make excuses and say, "Oh well, it is what it is." I want to talk about where do you go from here, because as a program, hit rock bottom. But where do we go from here? David Talks Boss once again saying we can share in a bold disappointment together. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. It's a very tough day, but it's New Year's Eve, so we're gonna be turning up tonight, baby. There's gonna be an extra shot or two thrown in there tonight just to cope with this. Trust me, brother. But I want to know, where do you go from here? So, granted, Alabama lost some guys in the transfer portal, but Alabama also recruited very well in the class of 2025. And so there's a foundation to build now. And I think that if you're Kalen DeBoer and that staff, the main thing is going to be, we hit rock bottom. What do we want to look like next year? What is our vision? Defining that the next 3-5 years. Where do we want this team to go? What do we want to look like? Crafting a vision, because things move very quickly when you just bring a team to the national championship. You lose that game, and then you're contacted by Alabama. Nick Saban retires, then you're contacted by Alabama. Hey, you want to be our next head coach? Fly out of Tuscaloosa, you get that job, and now you're preparing for a whole season with a new team. You're going into not only a new conference, I'll say it, the best conference in America, the most challenging conference in America in the SEC, where every single game is like the damn Super Bowl. I've been to a lot of these things. The intensity is like nothing else I've ever seen. And you're going into that season with guys that you didn't recruit, you didn't acquire in the portal. You're building rapport with them for the first time. You're getting to know them. And so all those relationships, they may not be natural, because for a lot of those guys, you weren't in their living room recruiting them. Well, now it's time to build the foundation. Bringing guys in that align with your philosophy and what you want this team to look like. Guys that mesh with you and the identity of this football team. That very high-flying year that's quick to adjust to, it's over. And now, for the first time, Kalen DeBoer is going into an offseason where he's going to use the portal, where he's going to recruit and develop his own guys starting in January, because now those early signees, they're enrolled. They can start practicing. They can start going to class at Alabama. So now you're going to start to get to know those guys, and some of those guys are yours. So the road for DeBoer really begins now, where we're going to see what he's made of. When you juxtapose him with Alabama's football program, how much of a match is he? I don't know if he is yet, and I don't think you're going to know if DeBoer is a match with Alabama or not until you see him without Jalen Milroe as his quarterback, because I just don't think that was ever a fit. And that's okay. Sometimes things aren't a fit. Russell Wilson and Sean Payton were never a fit. But you get him with a new quarterback that fits his style more, and you start to see his own guys getting there that he brought in to mesh with his culture. That's when you can really start to evaluate DeBoer. And I've met DeBoer before as well. And he is a fantastic stand-up guy. Very nice, gave me good eye contact. We had a good 5-10 minute conversation about what my career is going to look like, what I want to do after I graduate. He truly cares about the University of Alabama and the people that go there, the fan base, the student athletes, student workers, his staff. It's a very, very caring and compassionate guy, and somebody that, as an alumni of the school, I fully endorse being our head coach, and that I'd want to see coach our team. He still has my support, and I'm gonna ride with him, and I'm gonna ride with this team until I can't anymore. I will always ride with the Tide, no matter what. But it will be these next several months and these next several years that are going to define Kalen DeBoer and his fit with Alabama. There's a lot that didn't go right this year compared to what this team is capable of. They very much underperformed. There were a lot of internal factors in play as well. Having a first-year head coach and getting the rest of the team to mesh with that, you've got to give all of that context. But it's all about where do you go from here? Because it's easy when you're in a situation like that to not live up to what the expectations were. This is a team that, when you look at how it was composed this year, it was capable of not only making it to winning the national championship. But I mean that. One of my favorite metrics to look at is the blue chip ratio. And Alabama was number 3 on the list for blue chip ratio. You had Ohio State at number 1, Georgia number 2, and Alabama at number 3. Oddly enough, A&M at number 4. But I use that to say that this was a very talented team this year that did not live up to expectations. But what I will say, too, to close this off, is that sometimes as a program, you need moments like today and years like this to where, I'm going to say it for what it is, you get kicked in the balls and it hurts and you fall to your knees and you're in pain. But you use that sting, you use that pain to motivate you in these years to come. Sometimes you need to feel that sting of defeat and underperforming and wondering what could have been. Sometimes you've got to feel that. That can be the best thing for a program. I think, especially after today, you're going to see this Alabama team come back with a lot more fire, a lot more focus, because when you have a year where so much went wrong, you study what went wrong, and you become obsessed with what went wrong to the point where you become obsessed with what you can do right in the future to correct that and to live up to your potential in these years to come. I think this could have been the best thing that could have ever happened to this program. I really do. Because they didn't live up to expectations this year, but in years to come, I think that there's a very high ceiling for Alabama. Thank you all for joining on here today. I know it's New Year's Eve, and we have a lot of other things to get to today. I have to start to get ready for tonight and making the most of the last day of 2024. I said yesterday would be my last live stream of the year. Well, I wasn't expecting the result today to happen, and we got it. I was absolutely flabbergasted, but I had to come on here and give you all my thoughts because as an alumni of this school, I know what this team is capable of. I've been around these guys. I know who they are, and it bothers me to the core to see this team underperform the way they did this year. It's DeBoer's going into a second year, but there needs to be changes. There needs to be a shift in how this team approaches games and the intensity that they play with, their preparedness, their attention to detail. This year is what it is. You can't harp on it. I'm not somebody who wants to obsess with the past and live in the past. You lose when you get stuck in the past. You win when you focus on solutions. What can be better in the future? Competitive drive, intensity, focus, attention to detail, preparation. It all needs to be better next year. Because next year as well, considering what Alabama did on the recruiting trail this year and the players they're retaining and what they've done in the transfer portal so far, what they'll continue to do, this team will have the same capabilities next year that they had this year. Challenging schedule, same capabilities. But it's going to take those tweaks, that course correction for Alabama this offseason to truly capitalize on everything that they're capable of next year. I back this team, and there's a lot of great things capable of next year, but it takes that course correction to get the job done. Thank you all for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this, If you're fellow Alabama alumnus, if you will, do what I'm going to do. Go get yourself a drink. You're going to need plenty tonight. But I do remain optimistic on where this program can go in the future. And I know I said that I'd never be a homer on here. And this won't be an Alabama fan channel. But I had to say what needed to be said today. And I hope you all can get on board with it. Happy New Year's Eve. Happy New Year. Let's start 2025 off on the right foot. Have a great day.